Welcome to What the Biz, where we talk about building successful businesses, balancing life, and all the WTB in between. With your hosts, me, Richard Pyatt.
I'm Bridget Vector.
And I'm Dan Prochko.
Well, thank you for coming right back to be with us on What the Biz. Richard, Bridget, and Dan, happy to be back with you once again. Well, I was tempted to say here in the middle of a warm winter, which I guess is what it is, but not if you're in Florida or something. But how are you all doing? Keeping warm, keeping cool, staying cool?
Trying my best, to be honest. That's funny that you say down in Florida because, we got clients down in the southern states, and it's really funny. I don't know if funny is the right word. It's just being from the north, you're just used to, cold winters. And then hearing from them whenever there's like a dusting of snow, it's like the whole town shuts down and everything. It's like, it makes sense. That makes sense.
Well, that would be something. There's a lot of snow there. I know my Florida relatives, it gets to be about 60 degrees and they're freezing.
Yeah, it's amazing how relative it is. Had friends back when they were, in college and going through med school, do their schooling down in or their rotations down in Texas, internship, et cetera. And it was funny because it would get down into the high 50s and they're still walking around in shorts and short sleeves, and everybody there's literally in like puffer jackets.
Yeah.
And it's yeah. So relative, you definitely get used to where you're at. That's for sure.
I guess that's true.
Sure.
So just before we started recording, Bridget came in and I said, "How are you?" And she said, it's her busy season here at the beginning of the year. This is when certain deadlines happen, isn't it, in the finance world?"
Oh, yeah. We are deep into 1099s. Actually, the day we're recording this is deadline day. So we are into the thick of it.
We didn't think about that when we scheduled this, did we?
I didn't think a lot of things when I scheduled many things this week. So
We're being optimistic. That's all.
I absolutely was, but that's how that's going.
You don't appear to be rattled at all, so I wouldn't have known had you not said anything.
Well, thank you. I'm holding it together on the outside. Much better than on the inside.
Would never have known.
Just don't look at the tax bags that are under the eyes,
Oh, what would I call mine then?
And it's funny because this week I scheduled to kick off like our coaching. So we have that happening this week too.
Oh boy.
Last week, I made a post in a bunch of accounting groups that I'm in about some client renewals that went on last week and the success that I had with those, and the overwhelming response from the accounting field prompted me to open a webinar this week, which had over 60 registrants.
Ooh.
And I am being requested to open coaching for accounting firms, a world I never actually considered. So,
wow.
Yeah, it was a great success on a Monday, but why I put that into this week, I don't know, but it worked.
Well, I think that's in the careful what you ask for category, but that's not all bad.
No, it's not. It's good. I am a firm believer in giving back to the world, and it's paying off. So I'm excited to do it.
I have a client who's a consultant also, and she does that a lot. It does not necessarily intend to make a client out of everybody, and will even offer support and input when asked for nothing. And feels the same way that you get back what you put out there.
It only makes us all stronger. So that's a good thing. Yeah.
Your busy season too, Dan, is it?
It's becoming. We've been growing, but we're a person down still. We're at the end of interviews, and kind of, the whole thing about the schedule being crazy. Like, you never think, oh, I'm going to be doing interviews at this time. So you've scheduled stuff into the future, and then you have all these extra elements in there. So it's been busy like that. We've had a lot of qualified candidates this time, very qualified, which has been very, very positive. I'm excited. I cannot wait to bring one of these wonderful applicants on. I think it's going to take us to the next level is where we're at. We've hit a point where, and I think every business has this, where it's like you start growing and it's like we don't quite have enough to get the expert that we want, so we're going to hire somebody that we can kind of train, and that's what we've been doing, and we're beyond that at this point now, and we've hit that point, and so we're actually able to hire the expert that we need and want, and so it's really exciting because that'll mean much less hands-on with this role and this person, and should take us to the sky, to the stars, to the universe and back. I don't know. That was weird. I don't know what that was.
I love it.
Out of body experience, but we've hit that point. So it's been really, really exciting to look at candidates and be able to say, no, we need this many years experience, and that's what we're getting. So it's really, I'm very looking forward to this next phase.
It's interesting you say that,
Congrats.
because I had a couple of bosses for whom I worked, and they became mentors, certainly, and they had a motto, one of them, that they would follow, and it was this: hire for attitude, train for skills. And you basically just alluded to that in your description there, and you reminded me of that a lot. And of course, it doesn't always work that way, right? But in some businesses it does, and it's an interesting statement, isn't it? That you want the right person, and then if you have the right person with the right view and the right attitude, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this, I think, a few episodes ago when we were talking about hiring and expanding, of like, got to find the person that fits values, and we always did that. Didn't matter if they had the skill or not. That's had to have it. And now we're just at the point where we can afford the person with the skills too. So that's just the really exciting piece. We get to hopefully find a unicorn. I think that's kind of what it is. I want to find them and yeah, that'll be exciting. That'll be exciting.
Well, that is
That's
exciting,
awesome.
and to have that ability to look at it from new perspectives and abilities from different angles. Yeah.
It's always fun to see, Dan, you and I, how closely our businesses are kind of growing or doing the same things. I had an employee start this week. I can't believe it's only Wednesday. We're recording this on a Wednesday. And
it feels
this
like Monday to me, by the way. But yeah, feels like Monday to me. But anyway, go on. It's been that crazy. Like, it's still Monday, but okay. So you just said, okay, sorry, I derailed that.
No,
go on.
It's okay. I feel like it's the 8,000th day of January. Like, that's where I'm at. But it also feels like I've been in this week for 3 years. Like that, it's just insane. But I had an employee start this week, and we hired exactly what you're talking about. Somebody with the skills finally, and the change in the way of training and somebody being able to just jump in. It has been a godsend this week, to be honest. And it kind of makes me think, with what our topic is today, with building your brand and telling your story. I feel like when you start doing that, you also start attracting some of these unicorn A players into your world as well, because you're becoming recognized or known. So I love hearing that that's what you're hiring for, Dan.
Yeah. I'm so excited to hear that, because that's exactly what I'm hoping will happen as well, is that it's a person who can hit the ground running, doesn't need as much hand holding. Like, we definitely don't have to teach the basics. And it's like, it's more strategic questions around, okay, here's where we're at. I see what's going on. Like, are you cool if I jump in and do all this stuff? Oh my God, yes, please. Let's go. Let's do this. That's what I'm hoping will happen. But, and to echo your second point, I totally agree. I think when you find the right people, not just on values, but even on skills, like they embody and provide that quality that gives you your reputation that other people talk about, et cetera. I mean, that's what you started your business with. Like, we all started our business because we were good at what we do. And so there's that quality level. And then once you start hiring, you worry that quality is going to suffer. And then your reputation suffers, thus your brand, et cetera. And so I'm excited to have another person in, and excited for you, that I hope that helps you too. So this is, it's really cool. Really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if people have been following your story, Bridget, this succeeds the story that you told in a previous episode about having hired someone and then they didn't work out, and now you went back to the drawing board to find the next person. So who knows, maybe the universe was, just adjusting that for you. Didn't
I
feel
believe
like it at the
that.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really happy we're on the other side of that universe
I know.
adjustment.
Yeah, good for you.
But the glory of being a business owner, the next one's coming. So it's okay. We're gonna have our next hurdle anytime.
Well, you cleared this one, so celebrate that. That's the one. That's the thing.
Thank you.
Yeah, our subject today is the importance of building your brand and telling your story. And you both brought up an interesting angle to that. The idea that having a story told could affect someone in a way such that they'd like to work for you or they feel better about working for you, which is another angle of telling that story that's helpful. I come at it from the perspective that you have a story to tell and you should tell it. And I have another friend who carries that a little further in saying, if you don't tell your story, somebody else will, and you might not like what they say. So there's some initial thoughts as we jump into this subject, and the notion that you should most likely take control of what's being said about you and control that. I think the word is narrative now that we use, isn't it? But what is it about you that folks should know, and you control what gets said? And Dan, you probably see this too in your travels in marketing. Folks who have a story to tell, and you end up having to share with them the importance of doing that.
Oh, totally. Oh my gosh, totally. And I love your quote, like if you don't tell your story, someone else will. I mean, we always say no one's gonna do it for you. At least not the way you want. No
Yeah.
one's gonna tell your own story. And they definitely won't do it the way you want. And what's the other line? The other thing that I always thought about, like someone's reputation. Like I always heard this, I think a brand is like reputation, a lot of the time. And a quote that I don't remember who said it. I don't know where it's from. I don't know who to attribute it to. I could have Googled it and I didn't. Okay. Because whatever. Okay. I didn't. And it was something around like your reputation is what people say about you behind your back.
Yeah.
And so if you're not telling your own story to train others as to what you're about, who you're for, all of those elements, then you kind of leave it up to everybody else to fill in the gaps. And so that's kind of the perspective or the lens through which I look at in terms of for me why it's so important to do it. I don't know, Bridget, if you see it the same way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of look at this with the reputation piece, especially for those of us in service businesses, that sometimes it can become difficult because there is also a perception of the services you're giving that could be impacted by maybe the lack of what you're getting from the clients or customers that you're working with. So when they're not doing their part, that can impact what you're doing for them, which then can impact your brand and your reputation. So I think those that are in a service industry almost have I guess a harder, battle with that, and maybe have to put in a little more effort to maintain reputation and continue to share their story, and share, what they do and how they do it. So just a different kind of angle on how I see some of us having to combat some of the bad, I guess, if you want to put it that way.
I think sometimes too, the idea of trying to tell one story can be daunting. When we say, and by the way, my company's tagline is share your story. We might not know what it is we want to share, and we have to think about that and narrow it down. And we could easily, this isn't one of your strong suits, or it becomes daunting, just say, oh, I don't have time for that. I'll deal with it later. And life goes on. And then who knows how much time goes by before somebody else is telling your story and you've not told it yourself. So if we were to tell one story, what would that be? I suppose that might be a good thing to talk about. Somebody listening might be saying, I don't know where to begin with that. Do you get
Yeah.
that question, Dan?
Oh, tons. And actually, really what happens more of the time is that when we work with clients, they haven't even thought about it, period, is
Yeah.
really what it is. Is there
Right.
is, and that makes sense. We get into, I've said it before, we get into doing what we do because we're good at it. We're not good at the marketing piece, or we're not good at the bookkeeping piece, or we're not good at, et cetera, et cetera. We're good at whatever it is we started our business around. And so one of the things that we come at with our clients is like, what do you do? And a lot of times they tell us, oh, I make widgets, whatever it is. It's like, is that really what you do? If I asked your clients, would they know what you do? What would your clients say you do? And a lot of times they haven't asked their client, or they haven't like really thought of it from that perspective. And what's funny is a lot of the times they'll find out that, sure, maybe we make widgets, but really what we do is that we solve some other problem. That's really what this widget does, or this service, or this piece. For instance, well, Richard, you and me, we were in radio for how long? And we look back with nostalgia on it. But one of the things radio does is, somebody who owns a radio station, let's just say, might say, oh yeah, no, I put out music, or I put out the news, or that's it. That's what they do. And I'm just like, is that really what you do? If we ask other people, is that what they say? They'd probably say you entertain them. You're an entertainment company, and sure, you might have news and everything, and you might have other music or talk radio, et cetera, but you're an entertainment company. Now, if a radio station looked at themselves as an entertainment company, they would act very differently than if they looked at themselves as a radio station, and so that's what a brand or having the right story helps put in place, is a perspective for others to understand what it is you do for them. That's the important piece, the benefit that they get. It also helps define who it's for. A lot of the times there's businesses, and I know we've said it a ton, is like, if you're for everyone, you're for no one. They try to appease everybody. And it's like, actually, if you narrowed it in and focused on a small segment, you'd actually grow faster, because that story that you tell and how you tell it is much more focused, specific to them, their industry, their problems, and speaks to the benefits that they want to get out of whatever service or product they're buying. And so by crafting a story that is specific and focused and really about the customer or your client, as it were, depending which term you use, will really help you grow more. So that's how we approach a lot of things
Yeah, I think that's
in this realm.
a terrific way to phrase it. What problems do you solve for somebody else? And I think when you think of it that way, you can begin to create a list of the things that you've done for your clients that have helped them and solved their issues, met them where they need to be met, and become a trusted partner. I think that was your line last time, Bridget, a trusted partner in accomplishing what they need to accomplish. And so when you start thinking about it that way, maybe it starts to be framed a little bit better. One of the other things I do with clients is ask them about the industry. What is it in your industry that you're an expert about? And how does that help the folks you're helping? And the other thing I like to ask folks is, what are some myths out there that are in your industry that people believe about your industry or your client's industry that are untrue, that you could share information about? And so in the process of talking about those things, you are automatically positioning yourself as an expert, someone who knows what's going on today in that industry and what that means for the folks with whom you work. And that is, I would say, incredibly impactful, more than saying something like, we've been in business for 50 years. That means something. I hear that a lot, and you probably do too, Dan. People who like to say, we're family owned, we're in business for X number of years. And what does that really mean? It's an inference that you're an expert. It hits a heartstring, tugs a heartstring somewhere about being family owned, et cetera. But
Yeah.
I think you can accomplish that more fervently by just showing some things about what you know that help address the challenges that some of your clients have, and then it automatically does that. And I'm maybe I stirred up some other thoughts from the two of you.
I mean, definitely. I mean, what you talked about, I mean, those two elements you talked about at the end, like family owned and been in business for X years. I mean, those are all pieces of a story those are authority pieces that help people trust, but
Yes.
it's not a full story, you know? So, I look at, I mean, we are talking about a story. And I mean, this literally goes back to storytelling till caveman times, et cetera, our myths, our legends and everything. This is really what we're trying to do for our companies, create a mythos about who we are, what we do, why we do what we do, so that when the people hear it, they say, yes, you're right for me. So, it's all about that hero's journey of who's the hero. It's not you, the business. You're the guide. Okay. If we want to put this into the context of Star Wars, okay, you're the Yoda, you're the Obi-Wan Kenobi. The hero, or Luke Skywalker, or whoever you actually say is the hero in that story, Leia, whatever, that's the client. Okay. So everything has to be told from that perspective about your business. So who is the client? Is it homeowners? Is it fashion customers? Is it men who need haircuts? Is it women who need haircuts and styling? Like, who is and then you get even narrower than that. I mean, women is a big subset. Men is a big subset. Is it fathers? Is it mothers? Is it 35 to 40-year-olds? Like, you get real specific as to who the client is, and you want to talk to them aspirationally. I mean, Star Wars, what was it that Obi-Wan said? You have to fight, you have to fight the Empire. Like, holy cow, that is daunting and huge. He was a farmer, like, that's a huge thing to take on. But as humans, we want aspiration. We look to be better than we are, or we want to be better than we are. And so we look to brands and services to help us get there. Okay. Because doing it all ourselves is difficult. So when we can find those things out there that help us get what we want, we will spend money on it. And so in our stories, we want to position ourselves that way. For instance, our story is about helping business owners take control of their business growth. Okay. So we're looking for those owners that are unsure about how to grow. They aren't measuring elements, of their marketing and growth. And they feel like the industry is changing too quickly, so it's confusing. It's like, no, when you come with us, we have a system that puts you in control of your growth, so that when you say you want to spend more, it's going to get you more, and we prove it. And then we have a whole other story that goes with that, and as I mentioned before, authority elements and other system pieces that help make that happen. But I think the story, what I really was getting at through all of that, was like centralizing your story around a hero with an aspirational goal in mind, because that will be very clear to everybody who you're for and what that benefit is.
And the ultimate goal, of course, is to make new relationships, build trust, gain new business. And if we go back to the beginning of this episode and what Bridget just talked about, having announced the potential for a webinar, and she had overwhelming response to that. That's part of what we're after, right? She's built relationships. She has gained trust to the extent now that she offers something new and folks say, oh, look what Bridget's doing. I like that. I want to do that. That is the outcome we would like to see, right? This is what we're after.
I mean, I'd even say, yes, it is always about growth. I'd even say it's about turning the right people away, because it's easy to have so many people come in that, and then you say yes to so many new clients, but they're the wrong clients. You don't want them. They're bad. A story will actually help turn away the people you don't want. I mean, how many times have we had conversations around what was the acronym? What are they called? We talked about it in episode. A what? A PITA.
PETA.
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 Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
PETA.
Pain in the
Um,
ass if you've never heard
Yeah,
that.
there you thank you, Richard. Yeah. Um, and so having the right story helps to focus all that in so that as as people find you, they decide, oh, these are right for me. They speak to me. Or, oh, look, they really say they only focus on this industry. I'm not in that industry, so I'm not going to reach out. And that's fine, because if you have a process and a whole system that's geared toward an industry, you don't want anybody from somewhere else. It's just not going to work until you're ready to move that way. So I think all of that is the big benefit and importance of a brand. I've talked a lot. Wow. Yeah.
I feel like I have too.
We've
but that's
noticed
nothing new.
that we've noticed that with our business, that the clients that we are getting now or obtaining at least consultations with are much more closely related to our ideal clients and what we want. And honestly, I don't think that I have honed in our story completely, because it's still kind of in the works of who our ideal is. We're getting closer. But I want to note that it isn't an instant payoff. It takes time for this to build
Oh,
momentum,
gosh, yeah.
and it takes time to see it work. But when it starts working, it is magical. It is totally magical. Yeah, so it's nice to see on our side, at least, some of the changes we've made in our storytelling, or how we're saying that we're servicing clients or who we're working with. And now the level of consultations that we're getting from it is much closer to where we wanted to be. So, yeah.
Yeah.
It
It's
occurs to
so true
me.
that it's
I'm
so true
sorry.
it takes time. It's so true it takes time.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where, like, I mean, I think we've said it before too, as part of like team training. Is like, by the time you're annoyed with having to say it so many times, it's only when it starts sinking into others. And the brand is kind of the same way. You're going to talk about your brand in a certain way. You're going to talk about it so much, you're going to get bored with it. You're going to want to not do it. You're going to think it doesn't work. That's only when it's just starting to work, and just starting, meaning people are only just starting to get that you've been saying it for the last like year, and I said year, and then after that, it starts to creep in little by little, and it is a process. It is a long time going, because it takes a long time to get fruition from the efforts outcome, because I mean, it has to percolate through everything. I mean, like your emails, your speech patterns, your conversations, your training with team, it's got to get baked into client meetings. It's got to get baked into messaging and graphics, and like it just has to get baked into everything for it to permeate the market and hit the right people. And so it takes time. It takes time.
And it
Yeah,
could
I
be an
suppose that's
education piece too.
yes.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Yes. And that's one of the things, Dan, that you brought up that folks probably struggle with, the idea that they have to share their story fervently and over time for it to begin to resonate. And a lot of us end up not having the patience, initially at least, for that. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And ask someone you trust about these things, a trusted advisor who can help do that. It occurred to me as we were all talking that we've certainly talked about what we do, what our businesses do, that maybe folks who've been listening to us all along are aware. But if you've just stumbled on this one episode and you haven't listened to the others, you've heard Dan and I talk a little bit more than Bridget in this particular subject, just because that's been our thing. So my company helps people create podcasts with an interviewer that help you share your story. And the others of us can talk about what we do, but certainly, Dan, your focus is marketing as well.
Definitely. And like, for a good place to start, I'd say is really nailing down your audience. I mean, I know, Bridget, you spent a lot of time in that realm. I mean, what was that like, trying to come up with like your target audience and who you wanted to work with? I mean, because that's step one of this process.
It was painful. I could say that. Well, it's hard being in the accounting world, because we can serve and we can help pretty much anybody, right? But honing in on who we can help the most was, you're right, that first step of the process of who do we really, relate to, and how can we help them the most and have the biggest impact. So yeah, that first step definitely took some time. And I would say we're still in it partially. Like we're still refining every day,
Yeah.
what that looks like. And just taking the approach more of, sure, it's numbers, it's financials, it's whatever. Most business owners don't value that. That is not actually what they care about. They care about having a business that's growing and that's successful. And that's what we do. That's why we're here. And that's why we're a trusted partner. We are here to build your business, to help you grow, and to make sure that you stay successful. End of the day.
Yeah.
So
That's totally different from saying, oh yeah, we do bookkeeping. Like that's an amazingly
1,000,000%.
different story. It's so much more impactful. And it helps, I mean, it helps so many stakeholders understand how to talk about your business. I mean, the more you've talked about it, I'm sure because I know I have with my team, but my team talks about who we are differently. Are you seeing something similar in that way too?
Oh, absolutely. I think honing in on that piece of, okay, what value are we actually providing, or what problem are we actually solving that the customer or client cares about? Not so much what we know is important as a business owner, but putting it in a language that actually talks to the importance of who you're working with. And I think, Richard, you've commented on that during this episode, is just knowing what's important to them and knowing what problem you're solving, and then building your story and what your expertise is around that is vital. Yeah.
And then people like Dan can help you expose that story and connect with
Sure.
folks in your audience. And you mentioned you have tools that help people think about some of that.
Yeah. So the first is a buyer persona. I mean, we've all heard about them. I would hope so, but looking up what a persona is, and mapping that out, because whenever you build a persona, it's going to be for your target audience, and it should include, not only their demographics, which really help focus and narrow who you're talking to, but that'll help with language and how you talk to them. Because a mother with kids has very different concerns about the world than a single male in their mid-20s that kind of just graduated college and hit the workforce. Very different perspectives and need very different language. Where it should also have who influences them, what goals and priorities do they have, what problems are they feeling, et cetera, that you solve, et cetera. So all that will go in a persona. That's a great tool. And then if you wanted to expand on that and do more of a story, I really like what Donald Miller did with StoryBrand and creating a brand script for your business. He's got a book called Building a Story Brand that helps you create not just an elevator pitch, but that's kind of the whole point of the book, is to get to this point where you built this story, this script that is literally like 60 seconds that you can rattle off, you could throw on your website, et cetera, that make it really clear what you're about. But then you can implement that into every piece of your business. You can do that through onboarding of team members. You can put the story brand into the context of onboarding new clients. You can put it into what's it like to give our ongoing services. What does the story brand look like when we're speaking at events? What's the story brand look like, et cetera, down the line for each product. For each product and service, what's the story brand that really, really crystallizes and makes it so clear for everybody what it's for, who it's for, what those benefits are, and why are you the authority for this that should be worked with. So those are the two tools that I've kind of identified are really the most valuable in starting with the brand and getting your initial story going would be those two things. So yeah, worth a read, worth looking at.
It's funny because that is literally sitting right next to me.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Mhm.
Yeah, we use the story brand for us, for ourselves, and yeah, really good stuff in there. That's awesome to hear. Really cool.
What
We'll
we'd
love
It
like
it
to
just
hear.
helps
brain.
getting your brain going. Yeah, it
Yeah,
helps the
right.
thinking process.
Well, we would certainly like to hear how you did it, or the part of all of this you might be struggling with. Either way, whatthebiz.com. Maybe click the little voicemail opportunity there and just record a little message for us, or send us a message the old-fashioned way or on social media by way of whatthebiz.com. And we're interested to hear what you have to say in response to sharing your story and how you've done that, or how you wish to do that, or wish you could do that. What's standing in your way? Let's hear about that. Whatthebiz.com. And we, by the way, invite you to subscribe so that when these episodes land, you are alerted and can join us at your earliest convenience. And we appreciate doing that and having you be with us on What the Biz. Dan, Bridget, Richard, that's us here on What the Biz. And thanks for being with us.